Apiculture is an ancient practice that has been carried out worldwide throughout thousands of years. Recently, however, a more natural way has been becoming increasingly popular, being more of an ecological practice.
Beekeeping has served as a hobby and a career for centuries, which has been mainly dominated by men. The typical focus of a beekeeper is to ensure that the colony is healthy and productive. Therefore, it's understandable that beekeeping is carried out in a specific way. This can often be referred to as a mechanical approach to beekeeping, which does lead to positive results. Sadly, this method creates an environment which can lead to the varroa mite thriving, which is detrimental to the hive. An alternative approach is becoming more popular nowadays, which changes the purpose of a bee as a honeycombing machine.
This alternative approach can be described as a feminine approach, a more nurturing one, which makes sense as the hive is mainly dominated by women. On average, there are 500 male bees to 50,000 female bees. Thus, it can be said the hive exhibits some feminine qualities, which should be considered and perhaps endorsed when working with the hive, rather than controlling it. Bee Equality, whose founder Kathy will talk to later, runs a beekeeping course which focuses mainly on stewardship. Their teacher, a female beaker, doesn't keep her bees specifically for honey, but more of as an ecological resource. One such beekeeper who uses this technique is Tanti Tuju from Meath. He supports his queen bee by not keeping her as a prisoner of the brood box. Rather, he incorporates natural principles to his techniques. Swarming is still something that beekeepers are only coming to understand. Tanti lets his queen bee fly around as she normally would in nature. The other bees, carrying propolis, pollen and nectar, follow the queen bee to where she lays her brood and pack in the highest quality nutrients beside her. On doing a honey tasting with Kathy, not only could we see the difference in the honey, but we could taste how a different approach changes the honey. The honey was dense and incredibly medicinal. The wax is also of a higher quality and then can be sold for skincare products. Simply by changing your approach to beekeeping can create a diverse and different range of products.
Let's see what Kathy has to say.
Will you be able to give us a few lines about what you think of the role of feminism in beekeeping, even outside of the actual hive itself, but as an industry and a culture?
Beekeeping and feminism, there's a really interesting relationship between the two because the bees represent a more feminine approach to living in every way. It's less about control and more about working with the way things are and being more adaptable. I think women generally are more adaptable just simply because they have to raise children generally. And men, now that they're doing more of that themselves, are becoming, I think, getting better at adapting and understanding these issues. But I did really come up against my feminine side, I think, when I entered the beekeeping fraternity here in Ireland, because it is very much led, or has been, by retired men, I think, and often people who are in fields where they very much design and control things. And so the style of beekeeping, commercial beekeeping, which is not just Irish, it's international, is very much about controlling the bees and maximizing the product. Whereas if you work with the bees, as Tungi does, you lose less bees. So generally, beekeepers lose on average 50% of their bees a year. Tungi loses 6%. So they might say they get a better yield, but if they're losing half their hives a year, they might get a better yield per colony, but if they're losing colonies, then that does. I think Tungi actually wins out in terms of his production, or certainly would equal them. And the quality of his honey is infinitely superior, and his wax and the other products that he gets. So it's about really coming at the issue of a relationship with a sort of symbiotic relationship in a very different way. It isn't necessarily males as we know them, a male approach. I see it as more of a feminine approach. And I did find when I started my beekeeping training and attended these the honey shows and we did compete in one, that it was very much about deciding what is the perfect honey or the perfect way of beekeeping, and then staying very rigidly in control of that.
After talking to Kathy, we feel like the feminine approach to beekeeping is a more progressive one. What do you think?